Babble, Bullshit, and Beyond, a podcast hosted by me, Marco Kiris, bringing you a standards perspective of the film industry and an immigrant's perspective on America. The most fluffy, fun pop bullshit you can tune into.
You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run.
Today on the show, we have Robert Zuckerman, the acclaimed film and television still photographer who has worked on such films as Training Day, The Crow, Bad Boys 2, and National Treasure, where I had the pleasure of babbling with Robert while we were collaborating on set. Robert was consistently sought after by high-profile celebrities such as Will Smith, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Denzel Washington, and Oliver Stone. We talked with Robert about his illustrious career in the film and television industry. Hi, Robert.
Hey, Marco.
How are you?
Good, good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Let me ask you, Robert, first of all, do you have two Skype phone numbers? Because we dialed another one.
Yeah, I think I do. I just sent an email to you. I first got Skype when we were in London on National Treasure 2, Book of Secrets, and that's the first time I started using it.
Oh, okay. How funny
So
is that?
That might be an old one.
Oh, that's okay. So that's so we should keep this one on hand and not the other one.
Definitely, yes.
Okay. I'm glad we looked at that. I can't believe that you did National Treasure too. That's so funny. But how are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
I'm doing okay. Like, people ask me that, and I tell them, I said, nothing that $4 million in cash and a box of Cuban cigars couldn't fix.
And a couple of pole dancing women for you.
I don't want to get greedy or anything, but yes.
On your website bio, which I find to be really interesting, and I love all these guys, it says Will Smith calls him Picasso, Jerry Bruckheimer, Denzel Washington, and Michael Bay vie him on their film sets. And Schwarzenegger introduced you to Bill Clinton as the best photographer he's ever worked with, which from what I saw feels right. How does that make you feel? I mean, during those days and those years that you had worked, and at this time people are not calling.
It's interesting. Just can I backtrack a little bit about how I got into the photography and I started it. I had really delved into photography when I was in college. I started out at Boston University, but then I transferred in my junior year to UC Berkeley, and that's when I really delved into photography. I've been on a career path, or a path of wanting to be a lawyer, and I was a poli-sci major, but then I switched over, and a friend of mine said, hey, you should try this. A guy who was my mentor, his name is Joel Levinson, he basically said to me, you should check out photography, and I really found that I loved it. And so I did it basically as a hobby for many years, and then in the late 1980s, I had gone to film school, I had wanted to be a director, but I never really connected with that. I did a lot of tangential jobs in the film business. In the late 1980s, I was a partner in a very small production company in Hollywood. And there were three guys. There was a director, there was a lawyer / producer, and I was the sales guy. So I would take this director's reel around and try to get work. And he was a special effects guy. So we'd got like a lot of, TV logos and things like that. And after a year in business, even though we were making good money and I had brought in some jobs, these guys decided that they didn't like me and they didn't want me in the company. And it was devastating at the time because I basically had no money. I had borrowed money to start the company and put in. And but what happened was, it was pre-internet days for me. I opened the Yellow Pages. I found a lawyer, a crusty old lawyer in Santa Monica, and I sued them. And I actually won a little money. I won them enough money to pay off my loan of like $17,000, and I had a little money left over. So I said, what do I want to do now where I don't need partners and I get credit for my own input? I love photography, so I just said, okay, I'm going to be a photographer now. And I got some business cards printed, and that's how it all started. But 26 years later, I look back and I actually thank those guys for screwing me over, because it really pushed me into an amazing career. So it's a lesson that I try to, share with students and so forth. Often when dark times and negative things happen, it can really be a blessing in disguise. So I guess that's kind of what got the ball all rolling. And the point, I never went to be somebody's assistant. I just said, okay, I'm a photographer, and just started doing it. And I think sometimes when you make a choice and you commit to something, that the universe opens and gives you energy and support. And so, right from the very beginning, it wasn't enough to really, make a full-time career or, make me comfortable. But right from the beginning, I got work, and so that was it. And in fact, well, my very first job as a set photographer, once it came a few months after I made that choice to be a photographer, was in late 1989. And a woman I knew was a secretary to a big TV producer, and they were doing I think it was for ABC or Fox. They were doing a new TV show called Sunset Beat. Later on, there was Sunset Beach, but this was Sunset Beat. And I went on the set of that. I really knew very little about doing set photography, but I found out, and I borrowed the right equipment. And one of the guys on that show was a guy who at the time had hair down to his shoulders, was George Clooney. And so that was my first, my very first job. And my second job was probably the biggest, most sought after photo shoot in all of Hollywood. It was at the time Oliver Stone was making the movie The Doors. And I was virtually nobody. I had maybe, had just gotten maybe one or two actor portraits in my portfolio. I really wasn't anybody, but I happened to know or be friends with Oliver Stone's assistant at the time. It was a beautiful young woman named Christina Hare. And Christina somehow wrangled me a meeting with Oliver in the middle of him, producing The Doors. And I don't know if you know, like you've been on many sets where there's the unit photographer who does the day-to-day photography, but sometimes they'll bring in a really big name photographer like Annie Leibovitz or Albert Watson to do a special photo shoot. And it'll be a one-day shoot. That photographer will get paid a lot of money, probably more in one day than the unit photographer makes in 4 months. So that's that's a really big prestige shoot. Anyway, Christina, Oliver's assistant, got me a meeting with Oliver, and I went in, and he was sitting there with his producer Alex Ho, and he looked through my portfolio, which again was mostly just my black and white darkroom prints, not famous people. But Oliver really, he goes, man, this guy's stuff is great. And he said to Alex, hire Robert for the special shoot, which, like everyone, Herb Ritz and Annie Leibovitz all wanted that job.
Yes.
And I was a nobody. So that was my very second job in the film business, doing that. And I actually pulled it together pretty well on that job. It was an interesting experience.
Robert, that's fascinating. I had no idea. I remember when that movie was being shot in L.A. I was in L.A. working at Mirabelle Restaurant as a waiter, right on Sunset Plaza there. And I remember them closing down Sunset Boulevard for several nights while they were filming. Yeah. So you were there while I was working as a waiter across on the south side of the boulevard.
And I ate at Mirabelle a number of times too. I love that place.
Yeah, it was a good place. George Yermanides was the owner for like 25 years.
Good burgers, if I remember.
They were great burgers. I had so much fun. I met every superstar in that place, from Sean Penn to Madonna when they were together, to Arsenio Hall. Everybody was there. It was a great place to kind of like land in LA, and all of a sudden you get this A-lister VIP world, and you're in it. And you realize you're in the heyday. Well, you don't realize until later on it's the heyday of Hollywood at the time. The 80s and the 90s were like a big time for Hollywood, for everybody who was working in the industry. Unlike right now, which is very, very different. But in your photography, in your bio, Robert, you say photography, as much as possible, has become an integration of life and craft. Yes. Through it, I'm able to give value to people's lives and derive value in my own life beyond making a living. And I'm going to say that that means so much more to you at this time, more than ever before, from what I feel, and when I met your family the other night.
I think it was always that way. I mean, I was probably went through. We all go through adolescence and crazy stuff. We want to do this and that, but I kind of felt early on with photography. You want to do things in life that are meaningful. I mean, I never felt like going down the paparazzi route of just doing it for that. I wanted to be more meaningful somehow. And so somehow early on, I realized that for me, I wanted to have like good intention. Whenever I was photographing someone or doing a job with any kind of photography project, I came to realize that having good intention somehow comes through in the results. And it somehow maybe makes the world a better place or makes the experience good for people. So that's something that early on became part of my work, or something that I embraced. Another thing that I realized early on, rather than wanting to be a director and controlling every movement, like move your head a quarter inch this way or that way, I viewed myself more as a receiver than as a controller. So being a receiver, it kind of creates an openness for people to be themselves and for the inner to come out in the photographs. And so that's something that's been mentioned about my work by people who observe it, that there's a soulfulness, or that people feel open or able to be themselves. And that to me was important, because I wanted the experience for those people to be a good experience, and to have the quality of time be a good quality of time. One of the things that a lot of photographers do in Hollywood is to do headshots, and got a lot of jobs for headshots. And I always told actors or the people that came over, and I would say, look, this is your time here. I'm here for you. And as in movies, when you do as however many takes you need to get it right, I would say to them, look, if we do a session and you're not really 100% happy with the results, come back and we'll do more, and it'll be included in whatever price. I wanted to give value to people's lives. That's how it's happening. It's just the way. My theme song on the movie sets, Marco, and I'm sure you can relate to this, was Kenny Rogers, the Gambler. Know when to hold. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to walk away. And especially, with being a still photographer, there's a lot of times where it's very challenging to get a thing. So that was it. Well, I don't really need this one. I can let it go, and I just go to craft services, need some junk food or something. But
The portraits, you have so many portraits. I mean, from John Lithgow to poor Tony Scott, to right down to my boss, Nicolas Cage, to one after the next, and Jeff Goldblum and so forth. It goes on and on and on. And I'm going to guess that these are the ones that you selected. And some of them look like headshots, and some of them look like they're in their characters. Morgan Freeman and Nick's picture. I mean, it's a great shot. Fantastic shot.
Is his hair long in that one?
There's two. There is one with his hair long, and that's great. And this one's a little almost grittier looking, where it's just his face and it's lit on a slight angle. It's just I'm looking at these things, and how did you approach these people? Were you approached by the agents, by the publicists?
Well, a lot of for instance, like Jeff Goldblum, we met and became friends. I'd always admired him, even going back from the 70s, to like Next Stop Greenwich Village, and he's always been someone. And I remember seeing him in like 1991 at the Focus on AIDS benefit auction, which was held at the GGA building. And we were like the two tallest guys in the room, so we'd be like cross paths and just kind of give each other an eye look. And then in the early 2000s, I was doing stills on this Jon Favreau project called Dinner for Five that he was doing for the IFC channel. And it was fun. He would just do like a 3-camera shoot around a dinner table where he'd invite his friends over, and they'd get a little tipsy and have a conversation. It was great. And Jeff Goldblum was one of those, and he was talking about, I guess I don't know if you've ever heard of the Dogma School. It was there was a film a great film called Breaking the Waves. It was a European, I think a Danish film, and it was about basically the idea of not having a lot of long time between lighting setups, but just keeping the filming continuous with as little pause as possible. And for an actor, that's something I'm sure that they would really like. So somehow Jeff and I talked, and we became friends. And I remember one time in 2004, he invited me over to his house, and he said, I want to do some headshots, but I don't want it to be me looking in the camera. I want it to be like caught moments. And so that was us just, going around his house, finding little spots of light and doing that. But also I just became, from my very first work as a unit photographer on film, I noticed, that it doesn't have to take a long time to get a good portrait of somebody. And I just practiced that a lot, finding a good spot of light and just doing something in the moment. And often a lot of these portraits are just like 1-minute sessions off to the side on a set in a nice piece of lighting where you can get something, and it doesn't have to be, like I said, hours of setup. And I remember just a funny story, one of my portraits, I think, is Harvey Keitel, who's, an amazing guy. And, but, He's been around for a lot. And I remember, I think it was on the second National Treasure, we were at the Mount Rushmore, and I had this little device that I made. It was kind of a soft light bounce thing with I made with a styrofoam cooler, where I could just hold it in one hand and hold the camera in the other hand and get like this really nice studio light look out in the middle of nowhere. And I wanted to try it on Harvey Keitel out in the wilderness by Mount Rushmore. And I said, Harvey, could I try this? And he goes, yeah, but he goes, but I'm not going to look into the camera. He didn't want to look into the camera. And so I did a shot, and the lighting came in real nice, really nice. And I showed it to him, and he goes, okay, now I'll look into the camera. And it was,
He's hysterical. I mean, working with that guy was funny. I felt like we were two Goombas
Yeah.
in a cage. I mean, I worked
Yeah.
with him and we laughed a lot. And I don't know, I really got along with that guy.
Well, yeah, and also, I mean, he's an artist and a poet. I mean, he always plays these tough, kind of really tough guys, but he's really quite a brilliant, poet and a very sensitive man. It's interesting. I mean, we've both had a chance to meet a lot of people, and for me, I've just found, like a lot of times there's the public persona, and then there's the person that you really meet on a one-on-one basis, and a lot of times they're really different.
Oh, I find that they're very different. Having worked 10 years and 20 films as well, just with Nick alone, let alone
Right.
other people, I agree with you 100%. Robert, I want to ask you, did you do all these covers of these films? They were the posters, from what I see, of
Yeah.
Flight and Bad Boys 2 and National Treasure and so forth. It's just one after the next, and Terminator 3. And
Yeah.
I remember, you're not going to believe this, but on National Treasure, when you did the poster, which I didn't realize you had done, when he's got
The silhouette of the clock, yeah.
that was me in wardrobe, and then they put his head on the base of the body. It was my body. He wasn't around for the whole body shot. So they must have done two different things.
Well, actually, if you're speaking about the National Treasure, we were up in Philadelphia, up in the clock tower.
I was there in the clock tower. I remember that.
And basically there was this clock that was translucent, but it was letting light in from the outside. I remember just Nick speaking with the actress, and I said, "Hey Nick, stand in front of that clock and give me a poster shot." And he just gave me that shot, and I photographed him, and it was pretty much a silhouette, but it was cool. And I turned it in, I turned all my work to the Disney people and the creative people, and in movies, sometimes they'll do these very expensive photo shoots, but then they'll think the best shot will come from something the set photographer does, and that's how it worked. And so on that one, they had done a big photo shoot with Matthew Rolston, who's a brilliant and great photographer and one of my inspirations. But I guess they like that pose the best, and that's what they ended up using.
I guess because it's a great shot, because I had done the actual poster stuff and it wasn't this, but we had the same similar outfits on, and there was also one with the tuxedo that I had also done, and then I saw this, and I was the poster boy for the poster, and then they're going to put Nick's head on the body because he was too busy doing publicity, but you weren't there, so they must have used that other photographer at the time that you had mentioned.
Yeah.
So that's pretty funny, and then they used your silhouette shot because it looks fantastic from what I see.
Yeah, and it was and literally that was like, 1 minute. It's like, hey, Nick, stand in front of that translucent clock and give me a poster shot. And he just did that. Another thing about me, I had been on that movie, The Temp, which I told you about. It was my first studio film as a unit photographer. Studio meaning big major studio, Paramount Pictures. And I was up there in Portland, and they sent that guy, Matthew Rolston, who was a great photographer. He was going to do this, special photo shoot. And it was early on in my career, so I was just standing off on the side observing because I wanted to learn from this guy. And at one point, he's photographing Timothy Hutton. And I see Timothy Hutton like storm off the set. He shouted, "I'm an actor, not a model." And that was very revealing for me. So I decided then and there things that I would treat all my photo shoots with actors as acting jobs and not modeling jobs. Even though it was with a still camera, it was still about the things that you have in acting, emotion and feeling and resonance. And I felt that was helpful. Actors appreciated that, being treated like actors and spoken to like actors in that sense. So that's something that was, the learning never stops.
Never stops.
Day one. And even my last job, I always learned. One of my last films that I did as a unit photographer was the movie called Flight, with Denzel Washington and Robert Zemeckis directing. And for me, I had been in the business for many years, but going on that film set, watching those two guys specifically, Denzel and Robert Zemeckis, who both came to the table so prepared. I say that that job was for me like going back to film school.
And from what I read, that it took a while for Denzel to warm up to you initially, and then
Right.
he was lovey-dovey with you after that. Was that the same with Michael Bay and John Turteltaub and so forth, with some of these other people you had worked with, and Will Smith, for example? I mean, these are the biggest names in Hollywood.
I developed a good collaboration with Denzel Washington, and starting with Training Day, and then I did several films with him, and got the opportunity to work with him again. And then when I heard he was doing the movie Flight with Robert Zemeckis, I was living in Miami, and I was in Whole Foods. I think it was on a Wednesday night, in Aventura, North Miami Beach area, and my phone rings. It's an unknown number. I answer it, and hey, Robert, it's Denzel. And he goes, "Where are you?" And I go, "I'm in Miami." He goes, "Oh, too bad, because I'm having a script meeting with Robert Zemeckis at the Chateau Marmont on Friday." And I said, "I'll be there." And I got myself a ticket, got to LA, and went back, and they're sitting in the back corner going over the script, and they're sitting at the table, and Denzel introduces me, and I sit down, and then I just shut up and I listen to them, and like whenever there's a pause, I show Zemeckis, one of my photographs that I have with me, and after about the third one, he goes to me, he goes, "Don't worry, you got the job." And I just shut up and listened to these two guys and watched them go over the script, and it was such a beautiful thing, such a good behind the scenes moment.
What dedication! I mean, to have Denzel call you and ask you to
Yeah,
meet this meeting.
yeah.
I mean, that's a real personal and it's a private moment between these two people.
Oh yeah. And it was really just, to me, like I said, it was just being like in film school and behind the scenes. And I have another great story with Denzel too. And a lot of people, again, people have reputations, and say this, but Denzel's just very focused on his work and very dedicated, and he's a really philanthropic guy. My theme song on the movie sets, Marco, and I'm sure you can relate to this, was Kenny Rogers, the Gambler. Know when to hold. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to walk away.
Yeah.
And especially, with being a still photographer, there's a lot of times where it's very challenging to get a thing. So that was it. Well, I don't really need this one. I can let it go, and I'll just go to craft services, need some junk food or something.
I do love that. I will tell you what my theme song was while I was on film, since I never told Aslan. But if you remember the TV show Bonanza,
Oh yeah.
my version of that is "Get it up, get it in, get it out, don't mess my hair do. Get it up, get it in, get it out, don't mess my hair do."
That's a good one. Sometimes listen to different music to get psyched up for different movies. For instance, on Training Day, when I was driving into the hood every day, I put on like Lauryn Hill or Chuck D or some Public Enemy, something, and I did get into that. But like on Transformers, when I'd be driving into like the Bayhem, uh, I'd put on like AC/DC Highway to Hell.
Uh,
So that was that. Then on during National Treasure, the second National Treasure movie, which was filming in, I probably like my third or my fourth or fifth film for Jerry Bruckheimer. Uh, I get a call. Denzel's doing a movie called The Great Debaters. It's a low budget film that he's doing for Oprah Winfrey's company, and it's being shot in Shreveport, Louisiana. It's based on a true story from the 1930s about a black African American college in Texas. I think it was Wiley College. Their debate team, and the debate team wins and wins and wins, and finally goes up and debates Harvard and beats Harvard. And so it's based on a true story. And then and Molly said, "Denzel wants you to would like you to be the still photographer on the movie." And I said, "Oh, that's such a," I was so honored by that. And I said, "But I can't. I'm in the middle of doing this movie with Jerry Bruckheimer, and I can't walk away from that." So the next day on set, Jerry Bruckheimer himself comes up to me and says, "Hey, Robert, Denzel called me last night, and he wants me to release you for 2 weeks to cover his film until David Lee, who's Spike Lee's brother, who's a great still photographer, becomes available." And Jerry said, "I'm not going to release you for 2 weeks, but I'll release you for 1 week." So I ended up going down to Shreveport, and my first morning on set, they're filming in an old house down there. And I was used to Denzel, as I said, he's very focused in it as an actor. He doesn't socialize. He goes, does his work, goes back to his corner. And a lot of people mistake that for something else, but it's really just his focus. That's what I'm used to. But on this movie that he's a director now, you know how you're standing there, I feel a tap on my shoulder, I turn, and then there's Denzel, like, with a big smile on the other side, and as a director, he's totally kicked back, a total different, like, persona and energy than when he's acting. So that was really a great moment too, and also watching him direct, working with actors as an actor's director was something also a great thing as well.
Well, I'm sure that there are many more Denzel show stories, just like I have Nick Cage stories, but that would fill
Oh,
up
yeah.
like 16 hours per day. We'd go on forever about them because there
No
really
kidding,
are.
no kidding.
And the
Yeah.
same thing with Nick Cage. I mean, he was very focused the entire time. People felt that he was a very cold person, but it's like, no, well, why isn't he talking to anybody? Well, because he's focused. He's in his character. He's thinking about what he's going to produce on the next
Yeah, he's
moment.
working.
He's working. He's doing his thing, and we're not there to hang out with him. We're not here to hang out. We're here to do a job.
Well, that's what I noticed about Nick. He was Nicholas. He was also, there's much more to him than meets the eye or than the public persona, but he was a person who always came in, hit his marks, did his job, and he was very prepared. He always knew his lines, and he was always hit his marks, and that's something to me that a lot of people don't see, but I recognize that.
Yeah, I always found him as like a one-take actor. I mean, he just comes in, he belts it, it's all out. And if it's if the director wants another take, it's because the lighting is off, or there were some sound issues, or something's
Yeah.
up with the other actor, something's wrong with a prop. But he was like dead on each and every time, working with him year after year, film after
Oh,
film.
yeah.
It never stopped. So, but he was very focused, and he didn't want anybody to bother him, and it never bothered him. But we got along very well over those years, for the same reason that you and Denzel did, because you're not in his face, you're just doing your job.
Right. Well, it's the same thing. Michael Bay is a very strong reputation as a guy who screams a lot, but his films are so full of energy and testosterone that I think that that's an appropriate way to be on the set. And I've always personally found Michael Bay, like we talked earlier about people being one way, and then when you get them on one, and he's when you sit down with him and one on one, he's just like this really cool guy.
I felt that. I felt like, people gave him a bad rap, but I don't think they really understood it. He just wanted to get the job done, and he did care about everybody. He had a certain vision, and he believed in himself.
I remember one time maybe it was on the third Transformers movie. They filmed a lot of they built this whole Middle Eastern village area out in the New Mexico desert, and we were out there, and there's one big scene that was being covered probably by about 7 movie cameras. Big action scene with explosions in the background and soldiers running, and I was standing there with my still camera, and I went. I needed to like move over a couple of steps to my left in order to get get the still, and then all of a sudden I realized that there was a movie camera behind me, and I'd stepped in his way, and next thing you know, you hear Michael Bay like, da 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 da, who stepped in front of who you ruined my shot, and I just looked at him, and I said that was me, and he just looked at me, he goes, well, don't do that again, and that was it, I didn't get fired.
Yeah, he's a barker. I mean, I've heard him say that a lot of times. Who's ruining my shot? Don't ruin my shot. Get out of the way. And it's just like, who was it? Who's this? Get out of the way. Move, Mitch, move. It's just the way he works. But he gets it all done. He's got a vision. It's like, okay, you guys stand there. You guys shoot this. This is what I want. I want a 50 mil here. I want 100 there. Get it, do it, and boom. And he's just that kind of guy. He's always in a hurry, but it works.
Yeah, he knows his stuff, and even in the third Transformers, there was a whole scene in a big office building where the building tilts, and it was a big set of a whole floor of an office building. It was built on hydraulics, so it was called the tilted building set. And the building, we're all filming in there, and the building raises and everyone slides down and it was just one of those crazy things. And Michael Bay was saying that, I got the idea for that tilted building when I was doing sit-ups on an incline bench in the gym, and then the next thing you know, you had that, and then it's like a multi-million-dollar set with everyone working on it. So
It's hard to say much more than that, but I'm happy that I know you. I feel very fortunate.
yeah, I know you got to go, but thank you so much for your time. This is completely enjoyable, and
Robert, thank you. What are you kidding me? And thanks to Aslan who made it possible. I'm going to tell you the truth. And like for all those who think that, not being mobile on your feet keeps your mind not intact, you've proven them wrong all the way around.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
sharper now than you've ever been.
I've even had the thing where people, because I'm sitting in the wheelchair, they kind of
Yeah.
speak to you louder, like, yes, are you okay? Like that.
They speak to me like that when I'm standing up because they realize I'm like
Yeah.
not all there. They just look at the hair. They talk into the hair. Is what they do.
Right.
That's
Oh
funny.
my God.
I love that. But okay, Robert, you got to go and have lunch. We're
Okay.
going to eat our lunch.
If you could just say for us, where can people find more information about it?
So my website is www.robertzuckerman, ROBERTZUCKERMAN.com. My email is robert@robertzuckerman.com. I'm on Facebook under my name. It's under Robert Zuckerman. And Instagram, I think it's Robert G. Zuckerman.
That concludes our conversation with Robert Zuckerman, one of the most respected still photographers in Hollywood. Until next time, in Robert's words, shalom.